Hey Randy, this is Tokyo. Well, not all of Tokyo. It's 4 buildings from Tokyo in Lego form, which I'm going to assemble. We went to Tokyo on our honeymoon, but I'm not sure if we visited any of these buildings. I think we probably saw some of them off in the background somewhere, though. We did go up on top of something, but I don't think it was any of these. We went to an observation deck and looked around Tokyo from above. It was a bit funny because it looked a lot like New York City, but in a different order. It was like Tokyo had all the same parts and just put them together in their own way. Except the Tokyo Tower. We don't have that here in New York. The set does include Shibuya Crossing, which isn't a building but a crossing, as in streets coming together where vehicles and pedestrians cross. We did visit that place and even got a picture with the Shibuya dog statue that's there. It's a bit like Times Square with all the digital displays all around, but the crossing itself is a bit unique. Wikipedia refers to it as a scramble crossing, which means all vehicle traffic is paused and pedestrians are free to go every which way they wish at the crossing. I don't think we have that sort of thing in New York City, though real New Yorkers tend to cross wherever they wish and don't need no stinking crosswalks telling them where they can and can't go. Usually in our own Times Square, entire street sections are closed down, creating pedestrian zones, not so much crossings. When crossing open streets, we still have to wait on a signal and cross at a crosswalk. Well, we're supposed to anyway. As I put this set together, I started thinking about how all these buildings are pretty recent. Tokyo Big Sight opened in 1996, the Cocoon Tower in 2008, Tokyo Skytree in 2012. I think Tokyo Tower is the only proper old building in the set, opening in 1958. But even that is far more recent than a lot of the buildings featured in the New York City architecture set. New York City's Flatiron Building is from 1902, and the Empire State Building is from 1931. The newest building in the New York City set is the Freedom Tower, or One World Trade, which is only new because the previous World Trade Center towers were destroyed in terror attacks. And it occurs to me that the same is true for Tokyo and why we probably have this Lego set the way it is. Tokyo was devastated by the terror bombings of World War II. Allied forces bombed much of the country, but Tokyo in particular since it was Japan's capital. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki tend to overshadow the conventional bombings, but hundreds of thousands of Japanese civilians were killed by bombs dropped by the American, British, and Chinese over the course of the war, before the atomic bombs were dropped. We tend to think of Japan as being very modern, but often forget the reason for it. We think, well, Japan is just focused on the future, on innovation and technology. But that ignores how much of Japan was destroyed in the 40s, and the country had to be completely rebuilt over the next several decades. This makes Japan unique because it's incredibly old, with history going back centuries before America even existed, and shrines and monuments from those times still exist. But around them, so much of the country was rebuilt, making Japan one of the newest countries in the world. So Japan is simultaneously ancient and modern in a way few other countries are, if any. Unfortunately, this Lego set doesn't really capture that, focusing instead on what was rebuilt instead of what remained, like this little nameless pagoda shrine. See you soon. If you're interested in this part of world history, YouTuber Sean recently put out a very in-depth video on the topic of bringing the war to an end in Japan. I recommend checking out his video, and we'll include a link to it in the description.